Today, or for the first time, for those who joined us only now, Mrs. Renata Koczoruk, co-founder of Girls in Tech in Poland, who's going to introduce now the next panel.
Thank you, Kuba.
You're
Did you
welcome.
introduce yourself this time or not?
You can if you want
This
to.
is Kuba Bochiński, the head of education in Copernicus Science Center.
Thank you.
Warm welcome for him. Thank you.
Thank you, and to you.
Okay, and my duty is to introduce you to the next panel, the third today, and this one will be about a very magical number. Number is 2066. How far does it seem to you? How much the world will change by that time? How old will you be? And most importantly, how old will our daughters be? This is when they predict women will reach equal pay in tech. I don't know how about you, but to me, it seems very far, given that in a decade, they say it will be possible to travel to the moon for holidays. So 2066, I don't know if it's fair. So in this panel, we'll be talking about how to speed it up. And the moderator, Karolina Wasilewska, who's the author of the blog Girls Gone Tech, will introduce the panelists, and they'll give you a beautiful discussion on the topic. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So our today's guests are Lori Tempelis, Director of Data Intelligence and Digital Commerce Solutions at 3M. Laurent Roux, Impact Officer of the Entrepreneurship and Business Creation at European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Professor Bożena Pasik-Duncan, IEEE, Women in Engineering, Professor of Mathematics and Courtesy, Professor of AE and EECS, University of Kansas, USA. We also have with us Janice Leverhagen, CEO and founder of ChickTech, San Francisco, USA. Arti Agrawal, who is from University of Technology, Sydney, and she's the boss of Women in Engineering and IT. And also Saida Yusupova, CEO and founder of Green Business Innovation, LLC, and Technovation Regional Ambassador. So, we'll take a seat. We're talking about reaching the point of a critical mass, and it's about the number of women in STEM. So let's start with some numbers. More than half of the world's population are women. 15% of them actually work in tech sector, if we talk globally. If we talk about Europe, it seems to be a little higher, about 24%. And if we talk about education, only 24 in 1,000 women in Europe are ICT graduates. And ICT is the sector that lacks the workforce. Only in Poland, we lack like 50,000 people for IT only. So that is why we are here to concentrate on what can be done to reach this point of critical mass earlier, as Renata said. So, Lori, my first question is to you, because you are the face of this change, actually. You went from marketing and sales to IT in 3M. How was it? What's your experience?
All right, thank you. So I spent 20 years at 3M Company, and 17 of it has been in marketing and sales. I am a customer marketer 100%. So business P&L, customer facing, solving the customer's challenges. And 2 years ago in 2016, they appointed me to be the director of digital commerce solutions. I initially, I just couldn't even believe that I got that role. I thought they were interviewing me for practice for a different role. So I went into that role, and I have to admit, they could have put me in any one of our 5 business groups, and I would have been completely comfortable. P&L, products, customer. But they put me in IT. And so
This one was new.
IT was probably the only place in the company I knew nobody or nothing. But needless to say, they put me there because this was about delivering end-to-end solutions for our customers and putting those technologies and prioritizing those so there was a seamless experience. So at the end of the day, I would say it was actually a great fit because I wore my business hat in every meeting, and while I wasn't deep on the technology, I could make it all make sense to our business leadership. So I would say the one thing that was consistent is that I was one of the only females on the industrial side the majority of my career. And I would say that in IT, that was still the case. So on our operating committee, there was 2 women out of 20. So that was the only thing that was similar. But I will tell you that having people like myself to come in from other functions of the company into IT is a great way to grow women in leadership in this space.
So, your company, 3M, on their website, we may read, at 3M, we know that inclusion is the key to unlocking the power of our diversity. So, is there any kind of written diversity policy in 3M, or just introducing a proper business culture is enough, from your point of view?
There is no official policy. However, when we hire, we absolutely make it a priority to make sure there's diversity and inclusion on every slate that we have. So typically there are women, there are diversities on every job that's possible. But the other thing that we're doing as a company is we have a pillar by our CEO, Mike Roman, about people and culture. And that is absolutely how do we accelerate and promote women in the company? How do we give them more visibility to what they're working on? How do we help them increase their competency and get recognized in the corporation? But no official policy.
Okay, we have 2 women here who are active in the environment of women in engineering. One of them is Professor Bożena Pasik-Duncan. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity, and women in engineering is a part of that. Why is it important to support women in engineering?
I don't know whether it works. It works? Oh, it works. Anyway, I am Bożena Pasik-Duncan, and that Bożena sounds very Polish. So I grew up here and fully educated here as mathematician, but I do control theory, and I do stochastic control that belongs to engineering. And in the United States, I like very much picturing engineering as a field that spans all science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. My passion is applications of mathematics and applications to engineering, but engineering really is fascinating, and that IEEE gives incredible opportunities and challenges. So I belong to Control Systems Society. IEEE has over 46 technical societies focusing on different parts of the research, and also councils, technical councils. And you choose area of research that interests you, and then you have incredibly a lot of opportunities. One of opportunities, and I was invited to help because I had experience of founding groups of women in control, but also very heavily involved in outreach, moving to the United States. I didn't know American system of education. So what I've done, I volunteered to teach 2nd, 3rd, 4th graders at elementary school. And this is about STEM. So the same model I carry on as a global chair of organization of over 20,000 men and women, you know, in that engineering, women for engineering. And this is unbelievable opportunity for every woman, because you can join and you can absolutely help others. You can just giving back to community is something that I would recommend to everyone. This is just exactly, and additionally, IEEE is unbelievably beautifully supportive now and open for diversity. It's only 11% of women in that huge organization. But the door is open for everyone. So I encourage everyone to become member of, because everyone has new ideas, and we have over 860 affinity groups around the world. So every weekend I am somewhere. Even my husband doesn't follow where I am. When they ask him where Bożena is, he thinks that I'm in office, but I am on the way to Jordan or Malaysia. So it's absolutely important to engage all this, and not only knowing culture. And I found love simply to know culture and to know women in that position, in that culture, different cultures. But what we do, we have best practices, and we share those sustainable models, what kind of things work, what can attract women, what you can do, and carry on those. So I could speak forever, because this is my passion. This is my baby. Women in engineering, and because it's so successful, so beautifully successful, that I would like to talk all the time.
There is definitely a person with us who has similar interests and experience, Arti Agrawal from the University of Sydney. You worked as a woman engineer, as a woman scientist in India, London, and Sydney. And now you run an organization called Women in Engineering and IT. What can you say about your activity and the situation of women in STEM in these three cultures that you had touched?
Okay, that's a really big one. So I was born in India and I finished my education there. And while I was doing my PhD, there were more girls doing PhD than boys. And I remember that the ratio of boys to girls in the undergraduate and masters was not so good. But the number of girls studying tech in India was quite high, and the way we were treated was pretty good. But when I went to London and I joined the engineering department, even though I have to clarify, I'm a physicist, not an engineer. I've always worked in the electrical engineering department for some reason. I found that it was sort of not such a great working atmosphere. I expected equality, I expected colleagues to respect and value women, but I found that women were not treated so well. And for that reason, I got quite interested in trying to increase diversity and how females were treated and the opportunities they got. And I became a member of IEEE, Nurjana, you will know, and also of the Optical Society of America, which is my technical field. And then in Sydney, when I moved there, I found again that the female participation in STEM is much lower than male participation. So this seems to be an issue amongst English-speaking countries. IT, for example, is seen as a very male-dominated profession. In India, IT is not so male-dominated. At least the starting and the middle levels, the female participation in IT in India is quite high, almost 40 to 50%. Because it is seen as a skilled job and a white-collar job. But in English-speaking countries, the perception is that mathematics, STEM, etc., technology are male fields. And so you mostly have men. And a lot of it is to do with culture and cultural perception rather than ability. The program that I run, Women in Engineering and IT in UTS, is run by the faculty. And I run this program because the university is interested in investing in the future. And it sees that it has to invest to get more girls studying STEM, to get them to take subjects which will lead to degrees and then to employment. So it's a sort of long-term outlook. And we work quite closely with industry to achieve these goals.
Thank you. We also have two people with us who deal with the same subject but on a different level. Laurent, I want you to tell us a little more about your program called Digital Education Action Plan, because actually it is a program under the surveillance of European Commission, and it also has one part dedicated to young girls who wish to start in STEM or whose potential in STEM maybe we didn't even discover yet, but we can. So what's the program about and why is it dedicated to girls between 8 and 12, right? So very young.
Well, thank you for the presentation. So yeah, my name is Laurent Roux. I work for EIT, headquartered at the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. We are under Digi Education and Culture. This is why, and I'll come back to it when I talk about the Digital Education Action Plan. We're actually doing many things besides education. Everything is integrated. We're managing and building already the largest number of innovation communities around Europe around societal challenges like health, food, digital, raw materials, many topics coming, urban mobility, and so on, to make sure the European citizen is well taken care of in the future. And so one of our activities is education. Personally, I take care of three kind of communities. One is the startup and scale up. This is my main responsibility. And we have many women leading these companies across Europe. I'm very happy to report that they're very successful. They're winning awards. They're winning a lot of external funding to take them to the next level. And then I also take care of the EIT Women Leadership and Entrepreneurship activities at the European level. And one of the activities we do towards the younger generation, because this is where it starts, toward these young female students aged 12 to 18, so slightly older than what you mentioned. It's under the European Commission Digital Education Action Plan. EIT contributes towards this plan that's until the end of 2020, where we work with member states, we work with many partners in these different countries. And for our part, we will roll out, and already we are doing a lot of workshops for these young female students to acquire advanced digital entrepreneurial skills, to also get in touch with inspirational role models in their own countries, in their regions, in their field of interest, to already spark in them interest, basically, and also show that there is an existing ecosystem, an existing set of mentors and support networks that they can rely on as they maybe further their studies in STEM, but also creativity and innovation. So we try to also bring in the creative skills into these programs, not just the science, technology, engineering, and math, but a lot of creativity and innovation. Because where we see, and I finish on that, a lot of the successful teams, a lot of companies that we support, they are successful because they're diverse in gender, in country of origin, in skill set. Not just engineers, but we bring in a lot of other skills into these teams, and this is why the companies are successful at the end of the day.
But why does this program concern schoolgirls? Because it's not about diversity in companies, it's about teaching diversity to young girls. So why are they kids?
I think two reasons. One is it has to start early, because as we heard this morning, there's a lot of biases in society, maybe in the family backgrounds, and things that young female students are maybe limited by. So if we get to talk to them early on and open their perspective basically on a lot of opportunities through these programs, we can correct some of these biases. We can make sure they don't get further deep into their mind, and they see the world as completely open. And also possibly it's these programs that we run are done outside of school in partnership with companies, with cities, with actors of the private, public sector, not just the school itself, but really outside to complement what is done already maybe in some schools, but need to be further developed with, again, actors from private sector, real companies, role models, other female men like myself who can inspire them to go on with their opportunities in the future.
Okay, so Janice, your activity is also addressed to young women. However, you, as a CEO and founder of CzTech, have two programs. CzTech High School, which is for high school girls, and CzTech Career Projects. Can you tell us a little more about them?
Yeah, so CzTech is a North American nonprofit headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Our mission is to get and keep girls and women in tech, and our goal is really with our programs to create a multi-generational community of people lifting girls and women up, no matter where we're at. So, as you mentioned, our signature program is Chick Tech High School. Our goal is to find girls who don't think of themselves as technologists, but who have the aptitude to do well in it, and get them to change their mind about who a technologist is and who they can be. And we do that through a series of opportunities throughout the year for 50 to 150 girls across our 27 sites. Our career program is focused on retention. So in the US, 56% of technical women leave the technology field before year 10 of their career. And I believe that a significant portion of that is because they feel powerless to change the system. Most of them leave because of a hostile work environment. And if they have the community and the support and the opportunities there, I believe that they have the opportunity then to make change rather than to leave. And that's actually, my undergrad is computer engineering, and because I didn't have that support, I ended up leaving technology pretty shortly after I graduated. And so our career programs and that community of support is based on my experiences and what I would have needed in order to stay in technology as a technologist.
Saida, next question is to you, because you also run some initiatives addressed to women, young women. And you come from Uzbekistan, a country that is quite interesting when we look at the statistics, because in your country, 70% of population is youth, and half of them are girls and women. Is that why you decided to support young women in tech? And can you tell us more about the projects that you run?
Thank you, Carolina. I'm really proud to be, here today and represent Central Asia, Uzbekistan. I'm a tech woman, so I run a consultancy in my country related to energy, climate change. But in fact, I'm here today to tell about impact projects that I'm running in partnership in my country. And I just want briefly share how I came to this stage from Women in Tech to Women in Impact Woman. And yes, the population of Uzbekistan is half of Central Asian population sits in Uzbekistan, and a lot of women, more than half. And it's a great potential, economic potential, first of all. But it's like my short story where I started from. It was 2 years ago, and I was in California, Tech Woman program, where I was based in a solar company. But most importantly, we were introduced to a number of impact projects. And I was introduced to Tech Innovation Project, which is about girls, pitching their projects, tech projects, 10, 18 years old girls doing a project at this age, and just being, getting critical thinking skills, getting entrepreneurship skills, problem-solving skills. And this is where I saw that I want this program in my country. I want this program for our girls. And as a mother of a 12 years old girl, I want her to be part of that girls, getting that confidence and getting that experience and trial at this age, for them to be able to gain, jobs in tech sphere in the future. So I brought back this idea, and I was lucky because I had a wonderful partner, director of another tech company, Elena. So we decided to have this program in the country. And I just want to show, to tell you a short story that how we started the program. So we just decided to meet the Minister of Innovations. We got a meeting, and it was just 15 minutes to persuade him. So we decided to give a statistics that in our country, in tech universities, which should be which are the, the universities where the future engineers and the future most prosperous jobs, sits within this sector. There are only 12% of women. So at that point, the minister said, okay, how many women, he asked his assistant, how many women do I have in the, professional sector, in the ministry? So we're just 2 women. And he called one of that woman and said, you are the focal point for this project from now on. So this is how we started the project 3 years ago, and this year we're running the 3rd round, and it will be in the whole country, and it's well supported by the partners. So it's a program of the partnership. And once you start this journey, it's really exciting, and after that we introduced a number of other initiatives to support women and youth to engage in tech field and innovations. It's, so we have introduced this year Women, Technology and Innovation Week in Uzbekistan, and we want these initiatives to spread to the regional level. So next year we're having it in Uzbekistan, but for the Central Asian region. So there are a number of other initiatives that we're running. It's Makerspace project, it's Artificial Intelligence Family Challenge. So it's a number of initiatives that are meant for the youth in our country, and we are doing that small contribution with our activities. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me be a little provocative to start, because a lot of bosses of IT companies that I have met told me, well, we will hire women. We will hire every woman who has a proper CV, but they don't apply for the jobs. So maybe there is a little number of women in STEM because they don't apply for the jobs. What do you think, Janice?
Just looking at my notes. I think that part of it is that oftentimes those job descriptions aren't written for women. I think that they're written, and when they're written, they look at in their minds, they're visualizing their stereotypical programmer. And when they put those down, they're creating a picture of what this job's going to look like and who this person should be. And I think that that's a pretty significant barrier for women who are looking at that. And I think that another interesting thing that somebody, this is a little bit anecdotal, but when I was talking to a lady who had started programming in the 70s, she had said that what she believed had happened in terms of the drop-off of women being involved in technology was that it used to be all about problem solving. And as the technology industry matured, it became more about tool using. And her belief was that, in general, women are more engaged in and more excited about problem solving. But when you read these job descriptions, they're all about tool using, right? It's, are you the best C++ programmer out there? Are you so excited about front-end development and back-end development? And I look at those and I'm like, not really, I like programming. I really enjoy learning new languages, but I enjoy them for what they can do because they're just tools. I want to know what I'm going to be solving with those tools, and I think that that's one of the reasons that it's difficult for women to apply. And I think it's also difficult sometimes for women to choose another job because the better the devil you know than the devil you don't, right? And so maybe they're not very happy in their current career, but they know that there's worse possibilities out there. And so it's sometimes difficult to look at a company, and even if they're talking a really good talk, you don't know that they're walking the walk. And so you look at them and you think, what if this is even worse, right? Which is, I guess, a depressing way to look at it. But I think that that's also a big issue.
That's what our imagination does, yeah, definitely. Arti, you mentioned in an email to me that when we look at the lower level of employees in a company, there is no problem with diversity, usually. So the bottleneck seems to be the middle management, because when we look higher to the top management, we see only a small number of women. So what can we do with this problem of the bottleneck?
So one of the reasons why I said that is increasingly we have CEOs and top management saying that they want diversity and they value it. And we have grassroots organizations and movements where women want to be part of organizations. And we have things like Chick Tech and other movements like yours to promote that happening. So clearly there's something bottom up and there's something top down. And yet the numbers tell a completely different story. So there is a bottleneck, and I think that's in the middle. Because we still have this range of, in the middle, this range of managers who haven't gotten the memo. They've not gotten it from the bottom, and they haven't gotten it from the top. And the practices that they're using to make decisions on hiring, on recruitment, on promotion, on mentoring, on giving important projects are still biased. Whether the bias is unconscious or the bias is conscious, but it exists. And they're not allowing this new generation of women and other diverse candidates to go up and go ahead. So I think that's the problem. Now, one of the things that needs to be done for something like that is accountability and transparency. If a company was to run an equality audit or a diversity audit of its processes and its people, it would be able to tell where the bottleneck is. Just like if you did a pay audit, you would be able to tell if people are being paid the same for the same job, as long as they have the same qualifications. So if there was a diversity audit, you would be able to identify where the diversity is being blocked, where it's being stopped. And then you know what to do about it. Is it individuals who need a little bit of training and support? Is it the policy in the company that needs a change? Is it a bit of both? So I think it's basically taking a cold, hard look at the processes and then fixing them.
So what do women themselves say about these bottleneck points that we mentioned, about not applying for jobs, and even if they have these jobs in tech, next bottleneck is the middle management. Professor Bożena and Professor Arti both have a contact with a lot of women in the business. So what do they say about those barriers that they encounter?
IEEE recently collected data, and survey is very meaningful. 75% of those surveyed among 1,500 members reported hostile environment and difficulties environment, mostly in industry. And that survey, I love very much analyzing data. And we always have to look around and collect and analyze data. What I believe as senior educator, what I believe that the most important for young women is to build confidence and to know what you want to do. You have to know, and you have to always do something that nobody will take away from you. It means you have to know your strength, and you have to offer. To give you an idea, when I moved to the United States, students complained about my accent, my pronunciation, because it was in Kansas. I was really frustrated. It wasn't my choice to go. I always say I left Poland, but Poland never left me. But how I manage? I just told them, asked them one day, who taught you that Kansas accent is the best one? And not only, my strength is Polish. So now I give always problem written in Polish, And if they solve, they get extra points. So everyone is motivated for learning Polish, except my husband. But I'm saying that building confidence and being sure that you are really, you have something to offer, that you will make your workplace better place. And don't look that application is not maybe right one or whatever. If you like that, if you have dream, just apply. And just when I applied first for job, I asked those people, do you know my research? I didn't wait for the answer. I examined them. Do you know, are you really interested in my research? You brought me here. So what you know about my research? And this is the way that I believe that it works beautifully.
Okay, so of course we know that women need to be confident. However, you can be as self-confident as you like, but in a hostile environment that you mentioned, it is not that easy to get your way. So what do you all think? How can we make the environment, the work environment, more women-friendly? What a company needs to do to be more diverse and more women-friendly?
Put women on advisory boards.
Yes, I was going to say it actually. We just proudly announced that we just did that at EIT. So we have 12 high-level board members at the European level, and now 8 of these 12 are women from all sort of countries, all sort of background, research, education, and business alike. Also, I think, we don't, let's say how we fund the activities, we can be very careful at our level, at the European level, how we write the calls, how we communicate about the calls to attract as many talented women as possible to these calls for innovation activities, to take a responsibility. So we do this already, and we are pushing our beneficiaries to do that very carefully to make sure it's a level playing field for the women to participate in all these projects. There are no barriers and so on. And also the role models, again, how we communicate, we have social media, websites, how we present ourselves in all the events we participate in. We can make sure that it's the women have a really outstanding place there. They are, presented if they are successful, so that again the younger generation can see that this is happening already, and there's a way up to whatever they want to do with their career and their life. The young female students. So this is what we do with the European level at EIT.
Laurie, as a woman from a top management, what can you say about the impact of culture in a company on the situation of women, on the way they feel in a workplace?
What I would say from my experience at 3M is it is a wonderful time to be a woman. It truly is. It's what you all want to do with it. We have things at 3M like the Women's Leadership Forum where our top executives are assigned to attending. All the women come. And the best part about it is we throw these things on the table, right? You have to talk about them, number one. So if there's a hostile work environment, I can tell you at 3M, I hear, and I have large teams working for me, I hear very little. And when there is an issue, I can tell you what's happening. Action is being taken. And when action starts to be taken, people notice quickly. All genders, right? That's number one. Number two is, what are women doing then to take advantage of those opportunities? Number one, we have to talk about women's challenges. So you talked earlier about mid-management. I was a manager at 3M before I had children, but this is a big issue for women, right? As women, you need to have a family if you want to have a family. That time period during your life when you're having children, we have to be able to support them. Support parents, by the way, I would say, not just women, but parents. And I think if we can do that, you'll see a lot more women get to the top. How do we be more flexible? How do you allow people to come in at 8:30 if they have to drop their children off at daycare? These are the things that we're starting to talk about at 3M, and I think that's how we start to solve some of these issues with women rising to the top, removing a hostile work environment, and really just opening the door wide open for women in general.
What about the communication that Laurent mentioned? Because, I wonder if you support the written diversity policies in the companies, because when everything's written, it all seems simple. We can always write in some kind of behavior code, don't tell sexist jokes, and it is not difficult to do, not to tell sexist jokes. However, many people think that those written codes of behavior are artificial, are unnatural, and that the more diverse working culture needs to build itself. So what do you think? Should we take this more natural approach, or a written code is needed?
I think that both are really important. I think that if you don't write it down and you just assume that it's going to happen naturally, then you're going to be very disappointed in the results. But you obviously can't just stop there. You can't just have a written policy and then everything magically is going to be okay. I think that, so for example, one of our previous largest partners, they were going through some hard times and they fired their chief diversity officer. And their response when we were like, well, you know, this seems like maybe a terrible idea, right? And what they said was, oh, well, it's okay. Diversity is everyone's responsibility. And I'm like, well, you didn't fire your CEO and then say running the company was everyone's responsibility, right? You have to have those people in charge. You have to have those written policies. You have to have something codified so that people can really see that it's supposed to be taken seriously.
Yes?
So what you say is important. Just a written document which no one looks at, no one cares about, is not going to do the job. Mm-hmm. You need the document to provide guidance, but you need leadership to embody those values. You need them to lead by example. So if the document says don't tell sexist jokes, and the CFO or the CEO or the Vice Chancellor is telling sexist jokes, there's no point in having the document.
Definitely.
So they've got to lead by example, and when people do things that are against the policy or in violation of the ethics of the principle, you don't have to be a bystander. You've actually got to call them out on it. And you've got to say, sorry, I thought that joke was a little bit aggressive. Maybe you want to tone it down. Or this is not how we speak to colleagues. Please don't use that language, etc. You have to not be a bystander. You don't need to allow it. So that the lived experience and the documents go hand in hand.
Okay, so if we are talking about diversity policy, if we want to write a document concerning this policy, should we take into consideration some, well, natural differences between the countries, yeah? Because a company always operates in a country, so in a culture that consists of, I don't know, religion, some code of behavior between men and women. So do you think that there are some universal codes of diversity, or they need to take into consideration all those cultural differences? Saida, maybe you.
You know, cultural differences should be taken into consideration. For example, I come from a society where women are more perceived as, you know, homekeepers, or the women who relate more with family, right? And you can't just come and say, you know, it's just new era, new technical world, and you know, from now on, women are taking different role. Yeah. Let's start from that point. It's not the case, unfortunately. So we need to take into consideration, you know, those cultural peculiarities whenever you introduce the policies and, you know, the programs, and, for example, how we promote our program within the companies, in the schools. So we say that it's an opportunity for women to have a flexibility, to have a better paid jobs in the future. And if woman is educated in tech sphere, she will have an opportunity probably to sit at home also, but have a job as well. So this is how we started, you know, and we are promoting, you know, engagement of women in this sector, and just step by step, you know, in the company. It's also, you know, a matter of having just a start, like to have one woman who starts, introducing some culture of engaging other women, inviting girls and showing them role model, because how you engage more women in the company. Girls, they need to see a good role models in the company. They need to come and see the environment where women work, that she can be well placed, that she can be well treated. And this is how we will just step by step, introduce women, women in tech perspectives in the companies and for the young generation.
Yes?
I would like to add that at universities in the United States, we have, at very beginning of academic year, we have formal training how to really follow certain kind of rules. So, and we must pass the test. We know what to do if we observe wrong behavior. So this is already in place, despite that community is international and very mixed. There are certain very good rules, because I know as educator, I know what is right, what is not right, and what I should report, how I should protect students from anything. The same, I'm talking about organizations like IEEE, a huge organization, is very international, is more participants outside, but again, the code, the rules are like just, like the house, rules of the house. Despite cultures, you have certain rules, especially now.
Everybody has to adapt.
Yes, this is exactly what I mean. And not only that, we now work very beautifully hard on this kind of changes, codes that everyone, especially at conferences, technical conferences, that people need to just behave. So there is no excuse that you had few drinks and you can behave very freely in the way like maybe some women don't like to see that. So I like very much those certain rules that and codes that we follow despite, very, very international communities. So organizations should follow certain type of codes, and IEEE is very progressive now and very much in favor to have that kind of codes. And I'm saying at university is so clear now that I feel very comfortable because I still speak with accent. I still can be considered as foreigner after 35 years, but I feel comfortable because I know what is appropriate, what is not. Thank you.
Arti, what do you think about it as a woman who experienced living and being a woman in tech in 3 different cultures?
Repeat what you want me to specifically address.
The question about the impact of cultural differences on the written code of diversity. Do you think it matters?
I think the cultural difference has to be considered. There are legal implications. Certain things are illegal in certain countries. So homosexuality is illegal in certain countries. You can't write that in your code and as a company be doing something illegal. I think that's something to be considered. Having said that, you can have certain values, and most of those values should relate to human rights. And it's more a question of saying, not only walk the legal line, but walk the line of empathy and consideration. And most of these codes are about not violating labor laws in a country. That's one side of it, which is the compliance side of it. The other side of it is to say, how can we promote a diverse workforce? And a workforce that works for the company, does well for the company, but also leads to better conditions for all the people working in the company. So how can we have more inclusion? So if in a country like India, where there are multiple religions which coexist, you have to stress on religious equality. You have to acknowledge it, you have to accept that it exists. in English-speaking countries, like I often get asked, where are you from? Right? And if I say I'm British, where are you really from? I could still be British and Asian, but it won't be accepted. So then in that case, the emphasis has to include this sort of cultural sensitivity as well.
Definitely. So we are talking about changing the patterns of human behavior here. So at what age or what stage of education maybe should we target girls? And I don't think that only girls, if we want them to avoid this kind of bias that Laurent mentioned in thinking about themselves in tech.
I think that it needs to be a continuum. You can't just talk to, say, 4-year-olds one time and then say, and now you're free of bias.
The revolution has begun.
Yes, yes. I think that ensuring that we have supports for girls and then women or children in general throughout their lifespan is very important. This is actually a slightly narrower version of this question is something we get asked a lot in the US where, because we serve high school students mainly, and they say, oh, well, high school's too late. And I'm like, listen, fool. If you are telling me the 16-year-old can't learn how to code, yet you're telling 65-year-old people who are getting ready to retire that they could learn to code then, that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, we need to provide that support so that these girls and women can choose a career at whatever stage they're ready for it, and hopefully it's in technology, but allowing people to be able to choose what their full potential is at any stage rather than saying, you know, at age 7, you know, your potential is done. You have to have chosen, you have to be on a path, or, you know, your confidence is ruined, or whatever it might be. I think that when we do that, we limit. And what I've actually heard from middle school girls at this point is that they think it's too late for them to learn how to code. And we're talking 12-year-olds, because they didn't start learning to code when they were 10. And so when adults are putting limits on youth, they have ears, right? They hear these things and they start to internalize those as well.
Right. Arti?
So I agree with you in part. We have to give support whenever and wherever it's needed, but perceptions and aptitude are slightly different. So research shows that children form a liking or an aptitude for a subject or an area aged 7 to 12. If you go to a 14-year-old girl and she's already decided that science or tech is too geeky, too nerdy, too blokey, it's not cool, and she doesn't want to do it. It's very hard to stop a moving train. It's much harder to stop a moving bicycle. So the momentum that's there is really important. So you have to influence kids much earlier to help them form a liking or promote a liking for STEM. And a lot of children in kindergarten actually don't learn in a gendered way. They don't associate a gender with subjects or with areas, but as they grow older, they do. So it is important to get them at the right critical points where they drop off. Subject selection is important. People select subjects at different stages in school. It is important to make sure that we get to them before that point so that they select the right subjects and they don't drop off because of that.
Saida?
So I want to speak about the experience we had with our program. So we have 2 age categories, 10 to 14 and 15 to 18. So the first year we were afraid taking the first category so that they're too small to try to code and do, you know, a project. Then, so we did the second category. And then the second year, last year, we added this, the younger category. And you know what? They were great. They were thinking out of the box. They were so easy to brainstorm on the ideas, brilliant ideas, you know. And the most interesting that one of our teams, they reached out of 130 countries in the world. They reached the best 6 projects in the world, and they pitched their project in Silicon Valley. So this was our youngest team, 10 years old. So it's very important to start early. And the second thing I want to notice here is the involvement of parents, the role of parents in decision making, for kids. You can try and you can involve a lot of, you can involve girls at early age, but after all, in our case, I don't know how it works in other countries, but I assume it's the case in other countries as well. It's usually parents, it's a family decision which career path to take. And that's why in our program we decided that we will involve parents. It's not only an opportunity for girls to try themselves, but also for parents to see how good is a child and their daughter in tech fields. And after that they can decide whether they liked it as a team, as a family, or whether they would like to persuade this career in the tech career in the future. So the more programs like this, like our program and other tech program for girls we have, the better. It's like a trial opportunity and a test for a family.
Okay. Does anybody have any question for our guests? Do I see any questions? Right.
Hi, hello, my name is Paulina. So I like to think about myself as a humanist in tech world because I work with startups, but I start as a psychologist, so I have agenda. And you said about diversity, but I think that, what do you think that we should add to the STEAM more humanist approach? Like, I know that in the US you have a minor and major, and in Poland it's more like that if you decide one path, you go with the one path. But what you said was, you said that very important is empathy and all this human approach. And do you think that we should more combine the STEAM world also with the world of humanism and philosophy, ethics, and psychology, because they are also the fields that influence how our work environment looks and what we produce with the technology we create?
I would answer that. I absolutely agree. I mean, I just told you I come from a marketing and sales background, and I think when we talk about technology in IT in this space, when we only talk about coding, I think we're missing a bigger, broader piece. So I believe that you don't choose something at one age and stick to it forever. I believe that everything right now in the business world is centered around technology. So whether or not you want to be in it, you're in it. So to me, at 3M Company, you'll see it in our transformation efforts from the ERP to our front end facing our customers to our digitization efforts. And you need all kinds of people to be in that. You can't just have one type of person. So I completely agree that you have to take the approach that IT and technology is the path forward with business and not just a function that you major or minor in.
Yeah, just to add to this, so of course, is what you learn at school is very important. What you in your family environment is also very important, but also what you do extra, and I think in Europe, also in the US, this is where you develop as an individual by all the extracurricular activity, and you interact with people maybe outside of your major. And that thing's really important. This is how all the kids, male, female, can become more rounded, more skilled, and participate fully in the society in the future. So, yeah, this is what I would advocate for: more extracurricular activity that help to grow.
I also wanted to add that students in the United States, especially those students that I deal with, for some reason they already figure out that more broadly you are educated, more bigger picture you have, you will benefit better. It means you will have more opportunities. So unfortunately, in the United States, you can even study 4 majors. And those majors differ tremendously. It can be philosophy and engineering, can be, Spanish and mathematics and so on, and all other, physics, astronomy and mathematics. So those are great opportunities. And then finding job is much easier because market is really, and I think at least now, really students know that they have to know more. Of course, thesis will be focused on particular project and on particular subject, but to be prepared for the complexity of the world and for collaboration, because now, if you want to learn something, the most magical tool that I use in everything what I do is what I call C to the power 5. Curiosity, creativity, connections, communications, and collaboration. And students love that. And this is just the most powerful tool for me, just using practice all together. Communicate well. Students know that if you want to do interdisciplinary research, you want to go for research in medical area, you have to know how to talk. You have to know how to understand physicians and so on. So it's great opportunity, I agree with you, great opportunity for women, but great opportunity for young people in general. It's fascinating, fascinating time. And I feel younger and younger. And I just simply, I believe that the word is absolutely great. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? We have time for one more question. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for a great panel discussion. It was really interesting to hear different viewpoints. I have a question. We've discussed a lot about, I missed part of it, so I'm sorry if I missed it earlier. We've discussed a lot about setting procedures and, getting people to follow procedures to talk about diversity or what not to say and stuff. What about companies which are not that big or which would not have all these processes, or companies which don't want to have these processes because you believe in keeping things simple and flowing? What would you advise? What can these companies do? What value proposition can they have which attract more women or more diverse people to be part of their team?
So one of the biggest things, is this working? One of the biggest things that I would say is getting out into the community. So like I was talking about earlier with the concern around the better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Even if you have a small team of 10 to 15 people, being able to meet those people and to see that they're truly great people and somebody who you want to work with is really the only way to combat that. If they don't see you, if you're not out there, if you're not talking to women, if you're not going to events where or other diverse people are, then they're not going to be able to understand that you really, truly are a great place to work.
So, thanks a lot for participating in our panel. Just to sum things up, we need to target girls and women at the earliest stage possible to make them confident in themselves in tech. We need to introduce diversity codes, even the written ones, because human behavior isn't perfect and needs to be perfected constantly. And we need to think about the bottlenecks that keep women from developing or from being more self-confident in the tech industry, so that in the year 2066 we will be far beyond this point where we reached diversity and equal pay. And it won't be the first year when we can announce success. So thank you very much, and give a warm goodbye to our guests. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the discussion. I was actually thinking what clever can I say about it and how to summarize it best? And then you know what came to my head? Let me not mansplain it to you. I think you've heard what you've heard. Now, we've robbed you of a bit of a coffee break. So we're going to extend it by a little bit. There's going to be a coffee break now until 20 past. We'll start with the next plenary session right here at 20 past 4, if you want to come back for the next plenary session. Thank you so much. Quick reminder, if you haven't signed up for mentoring, right outside there's the mentoring booth where you can add your list. There is a party in the afternoon starting at 8 p.m. in Copernicus Science Center, and everybody is invited to it as well. If you want to stay and just wait for the next session, you're obviously welcome to do so. Thank you.